am. No, you're not. We're all great. We're all right all the time. The great thing about the Mac and Jack and Doc and sometimes Pag's Saturday debate show is the fact that even when we disagree, we're all correct. I don't think I've ever been wrong on this show. And I don't think Jack's ever been wrong. I don't think Mac's ever been wrong. And Pags, maybe we have. Oh, well. Anyway, welcome to Saturday morning. It's the Mac and Jack and Doc Saturday debate show. We have numerous great baseball, football, and all sports debates coming to you for the next hour. So sit back, have some fun. And gentlemen, how are you today?
Good, fellas.
Good morning. Good morning to everyone out there who will be watching our show today.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, so the Rangers are the world champions of baseball, and their manager, Bruce Bochy, has won another World Series. Hi, Rick. Is Bruce Bochy a Hall of Fame manager? What do you think?
I'll take it. I think you have to say he is. 3 World Series wins with the Giants, and the San Francisco Giants didn't have an overpowering team. They won it in alternate years, too. So to keep a team on top over that span of time, and now to deliver the Texas Rangers their first World Series, that's 4 World Series wins for him. That's the same as Joe Torre. He did it with somewhat less talent, even though the Rangers this year, they shelled out the money, some big free agent signings. The last couple of years, Corey Seager, Simeon, they won this thing too without Jacob deGrom. He was a big free agent signing, 5 years, $185 million. He was out for the year. They overcame that. Imagine had Jacob deGrom been healthy. I mean, that's like the Yankees winning the World Series without Garrett Cole. I mean, just think of that, losing Jacob deGrom. He was their ace. And, I mean, kudos to Bruce Bochy. 4 World Series wins, great career. Just put him over the top as far as being a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that even as a player, he went to a few World Series, if I'm not mistaken, as a catcher, a few World Series teams too. Do you think that it matters the talent you have on a team? Jack brought up. Do you think that, I don't know if it's more worthy or a better chance of being as a manager if you have less talent? Does that take anything off of what you've done? In other words, people said Joe Torre, almost any manager who had the same kind of personality could have won World Series with the Yankees. Do you believe that's true?
Well, I'll say this. I know Doc's stance on this. Doc feels strongly about giving Joe Torre credit, and he's going to say so in a moment. I can give him credit too. But the bottom line is this. You do mention talent, Mac. Joe Torre was a manager of the St. Louis Cardinals, Atlanta Braves, and New York Mets for a good number of years, and only got into the playoffs, I believe, once with a weak Atlanta Brave team. I don't want to say backed into the playoffs, but they barely got in and got eliminated immediately. So the talent does mean a lot. But look at all the managers who've had a limited amount of talent and elevated, their teams. I mean, you take a Billy Martin who'd always take over losing teams. So even a team that was winning, he'd always elevate them and make them so much better.
And I think Billy Martin is Billy Martin in the Hall of Fame as a manager right now.
No, he's not in the Hall. He should be in if you combine his body of work.
No way.
So why do you say no, Doc? If are you saying because of the type of person he was, or because of the type of manager he was?
All right, so we have a whole bunch of different questions being asked here. So, number one, Bruce Bochy should go in the Hall of Fame when the time comes and he's on the ballot as a manager. Absolutely, he's won four World Series. He's been very successful. That's number one. Yeah, I agree with that. Number two, should we give managers credit when they take teams with less talent and get a lot out of them? Yes, absolutely. And Bruce Bochy has done that. Joe Girardi seemed to have done that for a number of years with the Yankees. I would say Aaron Boone has done the exact opposite. He has a team with a ton of talent, and he hasn't been able to get them there. But you were asking historically, should that boost somebody's Hall of Fame case? Probably not. I think when it comes to the Hall of Fame, people just look back and they go, how much did he win? How often did he win? How many World Series did he win, etc. So I think you're asking a lot of different questions. Yes, Joe Torre did not win when he was with the Cardinals, and he did not win when he was with the Braves, except for that once. He did not win when he was with the Mets. And then he missed a whole bunch of years. And then he came back and managed the Yankees and won a lot. And he needs to get credit for that because he was the manager of the team that won a lot. Absolutely, positively. Now you say, well, maybe it was the talent. That was always part of it. You could have a great manager with no talent. You're not going to win. But you still have to get the most out of that talent. And he did.
That's not necessarily true what you just said.
What's that?
That a manager cannot win with not as much talent. That they can.
Well, I'm saying if you have a terrible team of players, you're not going to win, no matter how great of a manager. I overstate it. Yeah. But maybe, Joe Torre wasn't managing in all those years. He reflected on his practices. I don't know if this is true or not, but he matured, right? When we get different jobs, when we go from one position to the next, I think a natural thing we do is we reflect and we say, this is where I did a good job. This is where I didn't do a good job. If I get another managerial position, I'm going to do this. Maybe I won't do that, etc. And he also had great talent around him, but he did get a lot out of his players as well. A number of young players blossomed under Joe Torre, including Derek Jeter and Jorge Posada and Andy Pettitte and Mariano Rivera and etc. And just so I don't talk for the next hour, I was a big Buck supporter, and I love Buck, and I wish Buck had a chance to win with the World Series, but he didn't. And you can't say the Yankees would have won with Buck because they didn't. They won with Joe Torre.
Wait a minute, because you're giving Torre a lot of credit and yes, almost sole credit. Joe Torre had one of the best. Well, you are. You're saying they performed. He got the best out of them.
Yes, he did.
What does a manager really do? A manager really doesn't do anything in baseball. It's the coaches. Yeah, one of the best bench coaches there was in baseball with Don Zimmer. He had Roy White as a coach. At one time, I think he had Willie Randolph as a coach, if I'm not mistaken.
He had a great coaching staff.
Right. So again, here you go. You're saying Joe Torre might have reflected. Maybe he had the right combination of coaches that got the most out of these players. I'm not saying Joe Torre shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. All I'm saying is you're saying, well, Billy Martin shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, and he took lesser teams and made winners out of them. And then
how many World Series did Billy Martin win?
I think he won one, if I'm not mistaken. But is that how we're going to judge a Hall of Fame? There's a lot of players that haven't won World Series, if I'm not mistaken, that are in all different Hall of Fames.
I don't think there's any manager.
Doc, look at the teams that Billy Martin took over. You're great at research, and look at how they leapt up. They took a big leap up after he took over as manager. That's as worthy as winning a World Series. In like 1981, for example, the Oakland Athletic team he managed, those guys were chronic losers. And he took over and they got to the playoffs. The Minnesota Twins, Detroit Tigers, Texas Rangers.
And what happened to those teams after he left?
Everywhere he went, he made.
And what happened to those teams after he left? And why did he leave?
I believe they went down after.
And why did he leave? Because he was a destructive force on the team. He was able to get a lot out of teams for a very short amount of time, and then he wore out his welcome. And the teams all went backwards. He destroyed the arms of the pitchers on the Oakland A's. None of those guys came back.
Doc, what happened to the Yankees team after Torre left?
The Yankees did not make the playoffs in
what
year did Torre leave? 2006, and then a couple years later under Joe Girardi, they won the World Series, didn't they?
But I'm just saying,
he left after 2007, Torre, and then they didn't make the playoffs.
You're saying after Billy Martin left, the team went down.
You're mixing.
After Torre left, the team went down. So
no, it didn't. They won a World Series under Joe Girardi.
2 years later,
they won the World Series.
Okay, I'm going to give you an example,
But
guys.
Billy Martin didn't have a 15-year reign as the Yankee manager or manager of any team. He had a very short period. He came in, he turned the team around, and then he created chaos and all sorts of problems. And those problems hurt the franchises. If we give him credit for turning them around, he also has to take the blame for then hurting the franchises. You can't give him credit for one part of his story and not give him blame for the other part. And he was a destructive force. Why did he get fired everywhere? If he was such a great manager, why did everybody get rid of him after just a couple of years?
Well, he always wanted just to be Yankee manager. That was his thing. As long as the Yankee managing job was available, that's where he was always going to go.
So the Rangers fired him because he was going to be a Yankee manager in the future, and the Tigers fired him because he was going to be the Yankee manager in the future? That doesn't make any sense.
But you're talking about off field. We're talking about on field, Doc.
Great manager, great baseball mind.
So I agree. I think one of the best of all time. I think you could say that, arguably anyway. So what I understand that he had problems. He drank too much. We all know that already. But as a manager, he brought made losers into winners. And you can't deny that. And I think that's World Series I think that's Hall of Fame credentials. What he did on the field, not what he did off the field. Because if that's true, there's a lot of people in the Hall of Fame that shouldn't be there.
You know, Doc, if you're just going to judge on the bottom line, there's a problem. I mean, take two of the greatest players in baseball history who are great guys as well, Willie Mays and Hank Aaron. They had like 20-year careers and they only won one World Series each. So am I going to say they're not winners because, and am I going to say Mickey Mantle was better than both? Because I'm going to point out to all his World Series wins compared to those two.
You guys are taking statements and extrapolating and taking them in a different direction. I think Buck Showalter, who's never won a World Series, has a legitimate case to be in the Hall of Fame someday. He's been a very good manager for a very long time, and he did not. The problem with Billy Martin, and again, this is the problem with Billy Martin, is he was a destructive personality. It's not what he did off the field. That was part of it, but it's what he did off the field that negatively impacted what happened on the field. The teams couldn't win because Billy Martin's approach as the manager. It's different if a player goes out and Babe Ruth does all this carousing or whatever. Okay, he cost the Yankees maybe in 1925 when he got sick, though nobody knows what exactly that was. But Babe Ruth was still winning. His behaviors didn't get in the way of the Yankees winning. And it was a different time, of course. We're not going to excuse what he did. But the bigger point is his behaviors, Mickey Mantle's behaviors, didn't get in the way of the Yankees winning. Billy Martin's behaviors got in the way as the manager of his team winning. And that's why he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame, because as much as he helped teams, he then hurt those same teams he helped. He turned them around, and then he turned them around backwards because of his destructive personality.
Well,
he didn't turn them around. He left, and then they went.
He got fired.
He didn't leave. One last thing, Doc. You say George Steinbrenner is part of the reason why the Yankees won a lot of World Series, correct? Because
That's correct.
Okay, so if Martin was such a bad manager, why did he keep rehiring him?
That was not one of George's best moments. I thought that was an embarrassment for the Yankees when he kept hiring him.
And Billy Martin actually was part of 2 World Series winners. He wasn't there for the 78 World Series itself, but he was manager half the year. So you got to give him some credit. When he got fired, they had won 5 in a row.
They were 14 and a half games out, and the team
but
was in shambles.
They won their last 5 when he got fired.
So he gets credit for winning 5 games in July. Now we're going to give him credit for winning the World Series because he won 5 games in July before he gets fired.
It was his team, Doc. It was his team.
The reason the Yankees won in 78, every player said it. You read every one of their books. Roy White never quite said it like this in our book, but when you read all the other books, is the level, the whole tenor of the team changed when Billy Martin was gone, and they could relax and they could play baseball. Reggie wasn't fighting with the manager. Reggie was put in the 4th spot. They batted him clean up the rest of the year, and the Yankees clicked.
Wait, I'm calling you out on that. I'm calling you out on that statement. The Bronx Zoo by Sparky Lyle gives credit to Billy Martin that it was kind of like his team, the way they continued to do things, the stamp that Billy put on the team. Right, you said all the books. The Bronx Zoo by Sparky Lyle.
I think
read it.
I'll have to
so
go back
many,
and read that.
Right, I read it so many years ago. I'm going from memory, but I do remember that.
I think he also said that the calmness that Bob Lemon brought was the thing that turned the Yankee season around. They were playing on edge. They couldn't even focus on playing baseball because of the controversy and the chaos created by the manager. That's why he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame.
That I think that a little bit more.
I just want to point out another manager who's in the Hall of Fame, and this kind of backs up Mac's argument to an extent. It could back up yours too, also, Doc. Both you, Dick Williams. He was he managed the 1967 Boston Red Sox, major underdogs that came out of nowhere. I think they were like a ninth place team the year before the 10 teams, if I'm not mistaken. And they came one game away from winning the World Series. 67 Red Sox, Dick Williams, the manager. Then Dick Williams went to the Oakland Athletics. He managed them to the 72 and 73 back-to-back World Series titles. He left after 1973 because he hated the owner, Charlie Finley. Charlie Finley brought in Alvin Dark, and they repeated. They three-peated with Alvin Dark, another manager. Now, 1984, fast forward, he managed the San Diego Padres to their first World Series appearance, Dick Williams. Because another manager came in and won the World Series for a third year in a row, and it wasn't Dick Williams. How important was Dick Williams? As Mac is saying, could they have brought in a ton of guys who lead them to a third World Series title? So there's two ways to look at it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you're saying anything I disagree with. And I don't think we ever know the impact of the manager when the team has won. That's where this all started. Like, how do you know that the manager, all you can do is give credit to the guy who was the manager. If the manager doesn't have a role, why do they have a manager? So if the team wins, you have to give the manager credit. If the team doesn't win, you have to say, well, the manager has to take some of the blame, right?
Well, to end this discussion, I'm going to ask you a question, Doc, to end this discussion. Hypothetically, if Mac managed the Yankees last season instead of Aaron Boone, could Mac have led them to an 82-80 record?
Better.
If Mac had managed the Yankees, they would have gone 162-0.
Yeah, exactly. Back to basics, baby. Back to basics. We'll start fielding right. Soon as we start spring training, we're gonna have bunting. We're gonna have fielding. We're gonna do all back to the basics. No more trying to hit home runs every time you're up.
There you go. All right, good debate, good discussion. And listen, as we started the show, we're all right. None of us are wrong. We're all right. I don't know how we all right because we're all different all over the place on these issues. All right, let's talk about coaches. We're going to jump ahead to a different question. You guys will know this much better than me. You're not going to like my answer when I give it. But anyway, who's the next NFL coach who should be fired?
Who should be or who we think is going to get fired?
Well, let me read the question.
Who should be?
Who is the next NFL coach to be fired, but who should be? Or, I think it's who should be.
It's a fair question, but I don't like it, even though it's a fair question, because I don't like to see anyone lose their job. So I don't want to call for anyone to get fired. You want to see them turn things around. I'd like to wait a little longer, a few weeks more to answer the question, but I can't. I realize I have to answer it now. So if any one coach has to get let go now, I think it's Ron Rivera, the Washington Commanders. He's been there a while. They haven't made any serious progress. The one year they got in the playoffs, they got there with a losing record, and they're struggling. They're not even sure on their quarterback situation. Sam Howell's the starter. They just traded their two best defensive players, Sweat and Young, for draft picks. They're not a team that's moving forward. As some people might say, Brandon Staley of the Chargers, But the Chargers have hope this year still. They might turn it around. They might even get to the Super Bowl, the Chargers, when all's said and done. You can't count them out. But the Commanders, they're counted out this year. And they counted themselves out by trading their two best defensive players. So to me, it would be Ron Rivera or the Washington Commanders.
Well, let me come to Riverboat Ron's defense. Jack said he did go to the playoffs last year. He did have a winning record despite
8-1, 500. Mac, they were 8-1.
I'll give it
they
to him.
didn't have a losing record.
I'll give it to him. I'll say winning because they got that tie. I'll just give it to him. It could be win or loss.
Okay, they didn't have a losing record. Okay.
Right. So despite Dan Snyder, despite all the stuff going around him, he still brought the team. Was very. They're still competitive. They give the best, in my opinion, the best NFL team in the league. They're taking them to overtime. They're taking them to the last drive. They still play hard for this guy. I think it was a great move getting Eric Bieniemy there to be the offensive side of the coach. I think Howell will progress under him. I think it would be a shame to fire Rivera, even though I know that's the most popular choice. So if I'm saying don't fire Rivera, which I don't think they should, I think they should give him another year under the new management to see how he does. I think the team will improve, to be honest with you. Bill Belichick, to me, and that's another popular person that people are saying coach to be fired. I think Bill Belichick right now is the person on the hot seat even more than Ron Rivera. Listen, this guy for 20 years was great. And I think his message, the way he does things, I'm not saying they're wrong, but right now are wrong in New England. New England isn't taking that next step. And, I'm not even going to bring Tom Brady into it because that's a whole nother debate. I think that Bill Belichick right now has lost his steam over there in the Patriots. I think the Patriots, the draft picks he's made, some of the players aren't playing, I don't think, as hard. Ex-players have said for him to move on. Super Bowl champions that played under Bill Belichick said, hey, it's time maybe that he should move on. So when you have your players coming out that, love this guy, they do, saying that maybe he should move on, I think that's even worse than the situation that Ron Rivera has right now.
All right, you're not going to like my answer. I'm just going to back you up on, and I don't want to make this a Yankee discussion. It's not, but I've always had been a big supporter of Brian Cashman because I think he did a great job. But I think there's a parallel there with the Bill Belichick. You can be great at something, and you can be great at something for a long time, but eventually a different approach is needed. Eventually, your approach doesn't work anymore. And that's probably happening with Bill Belichick, and I think it's happening, and it happened with the Yankees with Brian Cashman. But that's not the discussion here. We're talking about NFL coaches who should be fired. And Jack's going to go crazy. If you're not sitting while you're watching this, my answer, Robert Saleh of the New York Jets. I don't watch as much football as you guys, but that game last Sunday was the single worst football game I have ever seen in my entire life. It was the absolute Jets-Giants game. Horrific. It was so bad you couldn't not watch it because you kept saying it can't get worse, and it continually got worse. The play calling, the play, everything about it was terrible. But here's the thing that bothered me about the Jets. I know they won. I know everybody's saying they're 4-3. I know everyone's, look, now they're on their path to winning. This could be their year. It's not. Their quarterback is terrible. I know everybody wants to be excited. I don't believe in Mr. Zach Wilson at all. But here's why I kept saying during that game, and I'm only saying it sort of tongue-in-cheek because the Jets are winning and they have a chance at the playoffs, obviously, based on their record. But the thing about the Jets on Sunday that was abhorrent was the fact that they were winning that game because of their defense, which he's done a great job. He's built a phenomenal defense. And then that same defense kept doing things that other good teams or great teams just don't do. They kept making dumb, horrific penalties, horrible penalties. They had the Giants pinned in their end zone, up offsides on a punt. I mean, how do you line up offsides? Late hits on quarterbacks, late hits, personal fouls, 15 yards here, 15 yards there. The mark of an NFL coach should be that your team is disciplined. And the one thing the Jets have not been over these last couple of years is disciplined. Every game you think, oh, they're about to take a step forward, and then some guy makes a crazy 15-yard personal foul penalty. It's crazy. And that, I believe, falls right on the head coach.
Well, last week was an aberration with all the ridiculous penalties. And yeah, you're right. It was the worst played game I ever saw. The Jets didn't deserve to win. Okay, I'll say that point blank. Jets are very lucky. But you could also point out to Brian DeBall, his decision making, as opposed to Salah. Salah wasn't on the field. He didn't commit the stupid penalties. He was exasperated himself. On one of the late hits, he held a towel over his face unseen. He says, like, what the heck are you doing? This is ridiculous.
But he's got to teach them, right? Isn't that his job?
Look at Brian DeBall with 24 seconds left. He stopped this pass rush with the Jets. He dropped his guys back. He opened the door for the Jets to get in field goal position. Zach Wilson wasn't going to get the Jets in field goal position with that pass rush the Giants were putting on them. They couldn't guard the Giant pass rushes that game. Bad decision. He has 4th and 1. He's trying a 47-yard field goal at a certain point under bad conditions. Even if he missed the first down on a running play, they would have been in good shape. But you're not. But I could point with Robert Salah. They lost Aaron Rodgers. That's a terrible blow. Terrible blow. Okay, and the team is. You have to look at the team this way. Mac mentioned a good point with Ron Rivera. If you're going to defend Rivera, Mac's point of, well, they're playing hard, the Commanders. That's the key thing. If a team is playing hard, they're not getting beaten badly, they're competitive. I could maybe ride it out with the coach and hope eventually he turns it around. For about 3 weeks, the point on Mac made about Bill Belichick, the Patriots played very poorly. The last couple of weeks, they bounced back a bit, but they weren't competitive for 3 weeks. That's very, very alarming at that point.
Yeah. Again, I said I'm saying it sort of tongue in cheek, but it is on the head coach to teach his team not to make bad penalties.
I think you could call a penalty on every play if you want me to be honest. The way the refs are calling penalties are not consistent. They're very inconsistent. They'll call it one time and they won't call it the next. They'll call less at the end of the game and more in the beginning of the game. It's very hard to figure out the refs this year. There is no consistency at all. So if they're holding on every play, Doc, there's a personal foul they can call on every play with taunting. And there's too many penalties. There's too much inconsistency with the refs. I'm not going to blame Salah for that. I will blame. I will say to this, at the end of the game, Salah acted like he won the Super Bowl instead of being a little more solemn and saying, we played a bad game. And if you're going to go in the locker room and be all happy about that performance, you saw the ball walk off the field. He was ticked. And that's what Salah should have also been. He should have been, listen, we played poorly. We won, great. I don't want to lose. But that was nothing to celebrate. And that's the only thing that bothered me about Salah at the end of the game. I'm not going to blame him for the penalties because there's too many different things that happened there. But I will say something about the way he acted at the end of the game. He jumped up and down like they just won a championship game.
Well, the Jets stole the game. Really, the Jets should not have gotten the win. This is what bothers me. You talk about coaching, Doc. The last play of the game where the Jets spiked the ball with 1 second left. Why were the Giants rushing to get back on side? And the Jets barely spiked the ball and got, had 1 second left to get the tying field goal. The Giants took their time. The Jets couldn't have snapped the ball and thrown for
They would have
touchdown.
called a penalty on him. They would have called a penalty.
So what's the worst that would have happened, Mac? The Jets would have kicked the field goal. The clock would have stopped. That's the worst that would have happened.
But that's the reason why.
Time, maybe time runs out.
I hear you. I think there's the professionalism part, right? You have to run back and hustle.
You do.
Right?
Yeah. You fake it like you're getting back, but you don't quite line up in time. And the clock expires. I was shocked the Jets were able to spike it for 1 second at that point.
Yeah, I think the time ran out.
I think we all were.
But anyway,
again, Robert Saleh's done a good job. The Jets are 4-3 overall, but at some point, and I get the point that the penalties are called inconsistently and all, but some of those penalties, I mean, you're going like, you just have to be a little more disciplined, and that's got to come from the coach. But
I mean, worst game I ever saw, worst played game I ever saw. I mean, I never text Mac during the games, never. I texted him in the second half when the outcome was in doubt, saying the Jets don't deserve to win. At that point, I didn't care what happened. It was a ridiculous game, and the Giants too should be embarrassed to let that one get away.
And I think they are.
Shame on them too.
I'll give you one game that was just as bad. That was the fumble game against the Eagles. That was maybe worse played than that game. And
that was one play though. That was
a whole game, Jack. It was like, I don't know, 10-6 or something. It was a terrible game. It really was. But anyway, that's the most recent one anyway. So.
All right, good stuff. Rick has a comment. The position coaches are responsible for the penalties, right? But again, I mean, I think we get into the weeds here. You're the head coach. It's your responsibility, right? I was a school principal. If a teacher does something wrong, it eventually becomes something that the principal's got to address, and you got to fix it. And I see the Jets making a lot of. It just seems like they're always making dumb penalties. You're like, I think that's part of being a Jets fan, right? Like they just find a way to lose, and twice this year they found a way to win, and you don't understand how it's happened either time.
And Doc, one more thing. A lot of those penalties are frustration too. They're roughing the passers and stuff like that. They're frustrated about maybe the way the offense is playing, the way the game's going. So a lot of that has to do with frustration too. When you're on the field,
you just don't want to give the other team, especially a third and 95 up penalty first down. Oh my goodness, drive you crazy. Let's keep it with football. Should the Cowboys be moved to the NFC South and Tampa Bay moved to the NFC East? What do you think?
No, guys, who cares? North, South, East, West. All football fans care about in one division. We're used to the NFC East. It's a lot of fun. The Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, and Commanders. Okay? We're used to those four teams. They have great rivalries. If you move it, that means the Eagles play the Cowboys once a year. The Giants... maybe not even once a year, once they leave their division. Maybe they don't even play again. They don't play for 3-4 years. Okay? And a better question is the Jets-Giants. I don't mean to switch it. We'll stick to this question, but I'm just pointing it out. Why do they play once every 4 years? Why isn't it on the schedule a yearly game? That's what we want. Don't we want that yearly? There's no bragging.
That's what New York wants. That's what New York wants, and the Jets have been so bad for so long, nobody wanted to see that, Jack. The point is, to me, first of all, travel. You got to travel all the way to Texas. Texas every at least 6 times a year. Dallas is not in the East. Dallas is not in the East, folks. They're not. Tampa Bay is in the East. That rivalry, it doesn't have to be, Jack, in conference rivalries anymore. You can have rivalries outside the conference now. That's why they play in different conferences and they play different divisions once every so many. So you don't need that. I mean, the Colts Patriots rivalry was huge. You still can have those rivalries, especially if you meet in the playoffs. The point I'm making is you've got to travel to Dallas. Every team has to travel to Dallas once. Every time Dallas has to travel to each team once, and they're not in the division anymore. This is not 1960 or 1970 anymore. Let's get everything up to date. Let's put the teams where they should be. It doesn't make sense to me. Why? And I think Dallas right now would love to be in the Southern Division. They'd be in first place, and Tampa Bay might be competing for a wild card over in our division right now. I don't think you lose anything. So why call it the NFC East if Dallas is involved there? It's time.
You lose rivalries, Mac. If you move Dallas out, they don't play Philadelphia maybe for 3 years. They don't even play them
so
all
they
together.
play in the
let alone
playoffs.
twice a year.
So they play in the playoffs, Jack.
They might
still a
cancel, but
rivalry.
they don't need the playoffs.
It's
You
still
want
a
those
rivalry.
regular season games.
Who do you say? How do you know they're not going to be? You don't think Dallas, if Dallas was in the South and the Eagles were in the East right now, they wouldn't meet in the playoffs?
They might not.
They might have a better chance of meeting in the playoffs than they do this year. How's that?
No, it's seeded according to records, so it wouldn't matter.
I'm just saying. And I think Dallas would have a better record playing against the South teams. So they might get to bye instead of the 49ers did last year. I'm saying, Jack, the East is the East, the South is the South. Let's put them where they belong. There's no reason anymore to keep them like that. Tom Landry has retired. That's gone. That thing is gone.
It's an interesting question because geographically they are not where they should be. And the travel, is something that the players have to put up with. And if you're a Cowboy player, that's actually interesting because you're probably on the road for more miles than anybody else in the NFC East. That's an interesting point. The Giants playing the Eagles, they're right down the road from each other. The Giants playing the Commanders, they're right down the road from each other. So if you're the Cowboys, every time you go play the Commanders, it's 1,000 miles in an airplane or whatever. And every time you play the Eagles, it's 1,000 miles in the airplane. And every time you play the Giants, it's 1,000 miles in the airplane. So, yeah, I can see that from that point of view that they really don't belong in the East. They're in Texas. That's definitely not in the East. But I also hear Jack's point of view. Yeah, you have these rivalries and this tradition. And one of my worries with sports is when they keep just chopping away a tradition. We see it with the extra rounds of playoffs and wild cards, and the Astros are in the American League. Now they're in the National, or backwards. They were in the National League. Now they're in the American League, and the Brewers switch leagues. It sort of ruins and hurts the continuity of the sport. And it makes it hard for people to understand the history of the sport. How could the Mets play the Astros in the playoffs? Well, because they used to be in the National League. What? Doesn't make any sense. So I understand that part too. I don't know if there's a good answer because I think both of you are making great points.
Well, I have to add one more thing to it. You can make new rivalries. How big a rivalry is Dallas and Giants right now, or the Giants and the Eagles right now? There's no real rivalry anymore. There's really no rivalry anymore. So you can make new rivalries. You can start new traditions. They do it all the time. So I just think it's that time that Dallas goes where they belong, back into the South Division or into the South Division, and Tampa Bay comes into the East.
I'm just trying to look at the leagues here and decide if there's other teams that should move. If you're going to start to do that, are other teams in the wrong spot? Like, is Indianapolis really in the South for the AFC? I don't really think so. So I think if you're going to fix it geographically, you have to then do it for all the teams. And like the Chiefs are in Kansas City, that's not really in the West.
Well, you want rivalries. For example, the Cowboys and the Houston Texans. If they play twice a year, that would be a good thing. That would turn into, like you said, Mac, a new rivalry, a good thing. But they'd have to be in the same division for that to happen.
Yeah, they would have to realign. Yeah, they would have to realign everything, and I don't think the NFL is willing to do that. I don't know why, but I don't think they're willing to do that.
Yeah, interesting. There's only a couple teams that, at initial glance, you'd have to move, but then you have to figure out, like, if you're moving what you figured out was that's an easy flip. Tampa Bay is in Florida, that's east. Texas is in Dallas is in Texas, that's south. That flip them. That makes sense. But if you're going to move the Colts or whatever, you'd have to figure out a team. Where did I say they are? The Colts are in the South. I don't think they're really in the South. You'd have to figure out a team to flip-flop with, and maybe you create other problems that way. It's interesting. It's an interesting question, and I don't know if there's an easy solution to it. All right. Why are there no female umpires in the major leagues? And for baseball, there are in football. Why are there no? I don't know about other sports, but why are there no female umpires in Major League Baseball?
I'm not going to comment much on it. I'll just say I don't know. There should be. I don't have a clue why.
It's simple. Discrimination. The old boys rule over there. They're in football. They're in basketball. There's refs in boxing. Female refs in boxing. There was a female ref in hockey. I could see. I mean, I might be able to see something like that with skates, but there was actually a female referee in hockey too. And I can't. The only thing that jumps out to me is this discrimination against women in NFL. I mean, in MLB. And you think about it, most of these sports are contact, right? Baseball, once in a while, you got some contact. They run into each other or whatever. But for the most part, you're just seeing if somebody's safe or out. You're on a football field, you can get run over. In fact, I saw a female ref get run over. I think it was last week or the week before. And in boxing, she could get knocked out. I mean, in basketball, a player could run over her or she could end up in the stands. Baseball, there's hardly any chance of that. And I'm surprised. I mean, maybe women aren't into baseball like they are other sports. I'm surprised that there aren't no women groups going crazy over this right now. Why there's no female umpires? I'm shocked. I would think this would be something that they would say something or protest. I'm very shocked that they haven't taken this up yet. I know, Doc. Do you have a reason?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing Jack did. I can't say without any evidence that it's discrimination. I don't know that. I don't have any reason to. I mean, it looks like it is. It looks like it could be, but I don't have any reason to say that it is without any facts and history. How many female umpires are in the minor leagues? How many female umpires are in college? Why aren't they going from the minor leagues to the major leagues? Why aren't they going from college to the minor leagues? I mean, you'd have to research all that. But on a general level, you think it would behoove every sport to be as inclusive as they possibly could be. So why wouldn't baseball embrace that? It's a great question. I have no basis of information as to why it hasn't happened yet.
I can't see the discrimination factor coming into play here, because Major League Baseball would be sensitive to that in advance, and they'd want diversity. They wouldn't want it coming up. We'd have to hear from a particular woman who wants to be a major league umpire but hasn't been able to break through, and we'd have to see her credentials. Did she travel city to city in the minor leagues? Because you need that apprenticeship. You don't just become a major league umpire. You have to umpire in the minor leagues for a while. Is there any woman out there who is willing to pay that price and would umpire in the minor leagues and be a good umpire? That's the key thing about it. I mean, we don't want a woman umpire.
There are some terrible Major League Baseball umpires. Terrible. That don't have the same strike.
Well, you think of Angel Hernandez, the controversy with him. I will say this, guys. With replay, you don't have to be as good an umpire as you used to be, because decisions can get overturned. Like the famous Don Deckinger call that may have cost the St. Louis Cardinals the 1985 World Series. Guess what? That would be overturned. The Joe Joyce mistake on the perfect game with 2 outs. Guess what, guys? There'd be a replay and the perfect game wouldn't have been lost. So it's umpires. Their calls aren't quite as important as the way it used to be. There should be a female umpire out there. I'm puzzled why there isn't.
You think because the Major League Baseball umpire union is so strong that that's part of the problem?
I'm just getting this article here from September 29th, 2023. The AAA National Championship game had a female umpire, Jen Paywall, Pawol, became the first woman to umpire at the minors' highest level in 34 years. And she was the home plate umpire for the AAA National Championship game between the Norfolk Tides and the Oklahoma City Dodgers in Las Vegas. So it looks as though if she did a good job and she's now at AAA, that you would think that a promotion for her should be coming soon, right? If she's doing a good job, she's only a step away. The other article I found said seems as though there were 5 women umpiring in affiliated minor leagues. Somebody at single A in the Florida State League, somebody at the rookie level, somebody and 2 people in the ACL, whatever that is. And then there was the Jen Paywall at AAA. So you'd have to assume she's going to make it to the major soon. That's the progression as for players and umpires.
You want young umpires who are in shape. What people don't take into account, you watch these umpires, especially on a hot day, they're standing the whole time for the whole game. They don't go in the dugout between innings. They don't get a break to sit down. Imagine when some of these umpires who aren't in the best of shape working a double header. It's brutal. People don't consider what a difficult job it is physically for them.
Standing up in the heat is a brutal job. They don't do half of what other refs do, Jack. They're not running up and down the field. They don't have a chance of getting hit. What are you talking about? They're not running up and down the court. All they're doing is standing out there in the sun. Oh, my God, that's terrible. I think they even wear shorts sometimes, I think. I'm not sure. I mean, come on, Jack. MLB umpires have a tough job.
It's tough physically. You're behind the plate. You're crouching down. You keep getting down, up, down, up.
I'll give you that.
Wearing that equipment is hot.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. How about the base? How about the base umpires? The base umpires hard too.
What I'm saying, unlike the players who could sit in the dugout between innings, these guys are standing the whole time, sometimes for a few hours.
The refs can't sit. Oh, come on, Jack. Come on, Jack. The refs in other sports don't sit on the bench either. They stand up the whole game. Plus, they run around. Come on.
All right. You guys like this idea. You're making me think of this. You like this crazy idea of the fans throwing the ball back, and we're not going there. But what if, or fans making catches? I forget what this is all about. But what if you have a different umpiring crew? Like in football, you have your special teams umpiring crew, so the people on the field can get a break. When special teams comes out, the special team umpires come out, the referees come out. When the offense is on the team, you have the offense umpires, and this way people could sit more, and they could have a special bench for umpires. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I like the idea. Let them sit down, bring out a chair. Between innings. Well,
you know what? That's Yankee Stadium, they do the YMCA in between innings when they're doing the field and stuff. You could have somebody's job be to run out after the third out, to bring a chair to each of the position umpires and the home plate guy, and while the other guys are warming up, they could sit.
I know I mentioned this on the past show, but that's one of the most demeaning things between innings, the ground crew playing the music, the YMCA. These guys are very honorable. They're doing a very honorable job keeping the field in condition. They're professionals, and to be treated that way with the music and all, and they have to stop and dance for the crowd. Come on.
That's such a bad thing to do. How come they keep doing the job, Jack? If it's that degrading, come on.
I gotta say, I don't know if it's degrading or not, but it's played out. I don't even know if they're still doing it anymore, but. All right, we've seen the YMCA for 30 years now. We get it. It's not all that exciting. Come up with something new, please. Yes. All right. Jack wanted to ask this question. Pete Alonso is going into his walk year next year for the New York Mets. He is the Mets' big superstar. At the end of next year, he'll be a free agent. He'll be a big-time free agent. He'll be commanding a lot of money. If you're the Mets, do you extend him now? Do you play one more season with him? Or Do you one more season and then try to re-sign him, or do you just say we're going to play this last season with him and we're going to know that he's going to leave us at the end of the year? What do you do?
They can't extend them now because Scott Boras is his agent, and Scott Boras virtually always takes a client to free agency. The only way they could extend Pete Alonso, if Pete Alonso absolutely insists to Scott Boras, he wants a deal this offseason, a long-term deal with the Mets, and he's not going to take no finance. Remember, Scott Boras was A-Rod's agent. A-Rod wanted to be a Met. Scott Boras kind of botched that up, and he wound up A-Rod going to Texas. He didn't want to go to Texas, but he got the money. Bottom line, all Scott Boras cares about is the highest bid, the highest amount of money, and the Mets' willingness offseason to overpay by a lot. Are they willing to give a 7 to 8 year deal at $40 million a year? I mean, come on. Let's say $35 million a year for 8 years. What would that come out to? $280 million? Yeah, then maybe Scott Boras signs it. But that's not a good contract for the Mets. He's headed Pete Alonso to free agency. So what the Mets should do this offseason, trade him if you get a viable offer. If you get a viable offer, you could get good prospects. And you want to know something, guys? And when he's a free agent next year, at the end of the next season, you can re-sign him. You can bid on him then. And chances are Pete Alonso might want to come back to the Mets. But I'm not going to leave him there for one more year, and you're going to lose him when you could get a lot in return. I'm just not going to allow it to happen. And I'm not going to offer him crazy money now, because that's the only way Pete Alonso is going to sign before becoming a free agent, because Scott Boras is his agent.
Here's his home run totals, the last for his whole career: 53, 16, but that was the COVID year. That would easily come out to well over 30. Maybe 40, 37, 40, and 46. So he has averaged over 162 games, 45 home runs a year. The guy's a huge power hitter. So he's going to get the big money no matter what. No, if the Mets trade him and then try to bring him back next year, isn't he going to command a huge salary?
But you have to project his upside, what he's going to do going forward. And let's be honest, guys, chances are he's going to become more like a 30 to 35 home run man, average defensively, not hit for batting average. You want him to be a Met icon. You want him to be a legacy player going forward. But this isn't quite the Aaron Judge situation. Aaron Judge was a legacy player going forward. Pete Alonso is maybe barely in that category, but not at the type of money you're going to have to pay him right now. It's too risky. What's he going to be 4 or 5 years from now? I question it.
What do you think, Mac?
Honestly, I'm going to take Doc's position on this. I don't care if the Mets keep him or don't. It really doesn't matter to me. The only thing I can say is that the way they've been doing, they've been cutting players that's what Cohen's been doing over there. But as far as if they sign him or don't sign him, doesn't matter to me either way. I mean, if they think they need him, they'll sign him. If they don't, then they'll let him go to free agency.
No, Mac, they definitely want him. And I think at this point they would like for him to be a career Met, but you got to project looking forward on these contracts. And chances are, like I said, 3-4 years from now, he might be just another guy, 28, 30 homers, better than average. But you're talking about Scott Boras is going to demand superstar money for Pete Alonso. That's the problem. Pete Alonso's not a superstar. I know the home run total is impressive, but what about the rest of his game? Doc, what about the RBIs? How many runs has he?
He has had an RBI 100. I just turned it off. I'll have to get it back real fast. But he had 100 RBIs the last 2 seasons. I'll give it. His batting average hasn't been good.
Does he walk a lot?
So last year he had 118 runs batted in. The year before he led the league with 131. He doesn't really walk nearly enough for a guy of his stature. 65 times this year, 67 last year. His on base percentage, 318 was his on base percentage. That's terrible.
That's telling.
Yeah. His OPS plus, which is a stat I like because it's easy to just look at. If you're 100, you're an average player. If you're under 100, you're a below average hitter. It just has to do with hitting. So he was 122 last year. So the year before he was 146. The year before he was 133. The year before he was 122. The year before he was 147. So every year he's been positive as far as as offensive production. I think for me, the question is, do the Mets want to pretend, or not pretend, portray, wrong word, themselves as a big market team who are in it to win it all the time? Do they want to play the way I wish the Yankees would always want to portray themselves? And the Yankees did step up and sign Aaron Judge. So, but if you want to be that big team in the big market, you can't let your big superstar go away. Like the Yankees didn't let Aaron Judge go away.
Well,
so
let me detour.
You can't let Alonso go away. Your legacy met.
Guys, let me detour. You know who's going to be a free agent at the end of next season? Garrett Cole, because he has an opt-out.
Well, he can be. He can opt out, yes.
But if Garrett Cole pitches the way he has the last 3 years, he's opting out of the remaining 5 years of his Yankee contract. So now what do the Yankees do? They have to extend that contract. He has 5 years left. They've got to make it 7 years left on the contract at least, or they have to redo it. He might want $40 million a year for 7 years now instead of the remaining 36 for 5. It's a tough situation because Garrett Cole, he's been consistent. He's been worth the money the last 3 years, guys.
He's been great. He absolutely is going to be the Cy Young Award winner. I don't extend him. And I talked about this a lot.
If you don't extend him, you lose him. You realize that.
Yeah. I said a lot last year during the season, and this is going to play out big in 2024. If the Yankees aren't good, if the Yankees don't build a great team around Garrett Cole and the rest of the players, but if they don't build a great team in 2024, why would Garrett Cole want to stay? He wouldn't. He'd go somewhere else.
If you don't extend him, do you raise his contract, keep the 5 years from 36, give him $40 million a year?
I think with all those big time contracts, like you were saying, and I think this is one of the problems the Yankees had, is when you sign these guys to the big contract, you're accepting that you're hoping that they're going to have big years at the start, and you're accepting that at the end of the contract, you're going to be overpaying for a guy who's not nearly worth what you're paying him, but you had to pay those big dollars at the beginning to get him. But the idea then is you have to win in those first years when you first get them, because you're going to be overpaying at the end. I don't extend him now because I already know it's an overpay for the end of his contract. That's really the logical conclusion. So if he opts out, you say, thank you. You were great. You are an awesome Yankee. We appreciate everything you did, but we're not giving you more money so you can pitch until you're 42 or whatever it's going to be. No, not at all. See, I'm right. And
it's up to the end of the show, so
it is the end of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, another wonderful hour of great sports talk. This has been the Mac, Jack, and Doc. We miss Pags. The Mac, Jack, and Doc Saturday Debate Show. We'll be back here again next Saturday, 8 a.m. And, of course, tomorrow's the big football show.
Yes.
Have a great day.
8 to 10.